to my channel. My name is Saskia, and this channel, Sincerely Saskia, is about my journey to PA school, as well as other bits and pieces of my life, including fashion, beauty, skincare, makeup, and anything else I feel like sharing. So today's video is going to be about should you take a gap year and how to best prepare for your gap year and make sure that you make the most of your gap year so that you can apply to PA school on your best step. Okay. As always, I will be looking to my iPad for notes just to make sure that I don't ramble and get off track. So to start off, I'm gonna talk about my personal gap year journey and how I was able to navigate that in order to be accepted to 2 schools my first cycle. Okay, so I did take a gap year between undergrad and PA school. I technically could say, I guess it's 2 gap years. I'm not really sure how people calculate the gap years, but I graduated early in December 2021. I was supposed to graduate in spring 2022, but I graduated a semester early. And so I used all of 2022 to basically plant seeds that will hopefully grow into fruition for 2023. So 2022 was basically the year where I was working on patient care hours, and I was working on finishing up last minute prerequisites, because during undergrad I was actually pre-med for most of it. It wasn't until junior year I switched over to pre-PA, and although the tracks are pretty similar, there are some discrepancies and differences. So during my gap year, I made it a plan to take some prerequisites like genetics and microbiology, as well as gaining some hours. So that's kind of how my gap year went. I'm gonna get more into detail in a second. So the first thing I did was I looked at the requirements for PA school to see what I was lacking, right? So because I was graduating in December 2021, that meant at the start of the new year, I was not gonna be in college anymore as a undergraduate student. So because of that, I decided 2022, starting from January, that was gonna be my gap year, right? That was gonna be the year where I was gonna plant the seeds to make sure that I was prepared enough to go to PA school and apply the following year in 2023. I hope you guys are keeping track of the dates. I know it's a little bit confusing, but yeah. When I started college, I was pre-med originally. I was pre-med for most of college. It wasn't until junior year where I kind of decided to switch to pre-PA, which was 2021. And pre-PA and pre-med are similar tracks. There are a couple of discrepancies and differences like microbiology, genetics, and other classes like anatomy and stuff that I hadn't taken because I was pre-med. That wasn't required for pre-med students. So when I switched to pre-PA, I was able to take anatomy 1 and 2 lecture and lab in undergrad, but I wasn't able to take microbiology or genetics. So what I did was during my gap year, that was when I took those 2 courses along with organic chemistry 1 and lab, because I got a C the first time I took Orgo in undergrad, and I was told to retake it and get a higher grade. So I retook it during my gap year and I got a B second time. So that was that. The reason how I knew this was I looked at the prerequisites for PA school. I'm gonna get into what you should be doing later, but I'm gonna kind of give you guys my journey so you guys can see where I'm coming from, and hopefully I can give you some inspiration as far as how to move for yourself. Okay. So like I said, I had to take genetics and microbiology, and I retook Orgo to become more competitive. I also needed hours. That was another thing I was lacking, because for medical school, you don't really have to have hours. It's not as a strict requirement as far as it is with PA school. PA school is more stricter to have hours for a lot of schools, whereas medical school, it doesn't really matter, and there's not a set amount, whereas for PA school, it's usually 2,000. So luckily that year in 2020, July or August, I can't remember, I got my medical assistant certification. So I am a certified clinical medical assistant, and I was able to use my certification to practice as an MA in 2022. So I got me an MA job in the spring of 2022. I worked at a clinic, a pulmonary and sleep medicine clinic, for about 3 or 4 months part-time. I was still taking classes that spring 2022 as part of my DIY postbac. If you guys want me to make a video on DIY postbacs, I will. I know some people aren't sure about how to go about taking classes after you graduate undergrad, and they think you have to get everything done in undergrad, and you don't. That's kind of the purpose of the gap year. But during my DIY postbac, I took, again, microbiology and Orgo 1 lecture and lab for both classes, spring 2022, while working part-time as a medical assistant. Fast forward to May of 2022, I moved back home to Miami and I get another job as a medical assistant. This time I'm working part-time and I'm taking genetics online, and that was like the last prerequisite I needed to take for PA school. In hindsight, I probably should have taken more classes to help my GPA, but at the time I wasn't really cognizant of how competitive PA school is. Obviously it worked out, I got accepted to 2 schools, but one of the schools ended up losing accreditation and the other school obviously accepted me and I'm going to that school. But still, I wish like I took my GPA more seriously and I took more classes, because I feel like that would have given me more acceptances and it just would have been easier on me. But that's another story. I'm not gonna get into that right now. Anywho, so that's what I did in spring 2022. And then going into summer of 2022, again, I was taking genetics and working as an MA full time. So that was kind of my main purpose of the gap year. I knew I needed hours and I had none. Thankfully, I had my MA certification and I was able to use that to gain the hours. So that was one thing checked. Another reason why I took that job was because I needed, of course, money. Of course, applying to PA school is very expensive. The schools cost lots of money, plus supplementals, plus the GRE and other things related to applying to PA school, like the Casper test, flying out for interviews, etc., etc. So I needed money. So the job provided me money, it provided me hours, and last but not least, it provided me a way to get my letters of recommendation for PA school, right? Remember, with PA school, you do need letters of recommendation. Depending on the school you are applying to, the letters will differ as far as who they're required from. I hope that makes sense. So for example, some schools require that you get your letter of recommendation from a PA or an NP. Some say just a PA, some say MD, some say your boss, some say your professor. It really just depends on the school. I think that's something people tend to overlook. I almost overlooked that when I was applying. One of the schools I wanted to apply to required a PA to give the letter of recommendation. And at the time, I didn't have a PA to really write me a letter of recommendation. I did shadow one, but she didn't know me well enough to write me a letter of recommendation, and I was not gonna ask her to, because I was like, she doesn't really know me, it doesn't make any sense. Make sure, of course, your letter comes from people who know you. That's another thing you might wanna work on during your gap year, is getting letters of recommendation, especially if you're one of those people that didn't really do much in undergrad, or you passed undergrad already and you switched to PA later on in life. You kind of want to figure out who is going to be writing you these letters. And my job was actually able to provide me 4 out of the 5 letters I needed. Technically, you don't need 5 letters, but I wanted 5 letters. The schools typically require about 3 letters. I think there's some schools that require 2, but I'm not sure. But yeah, 4 out of 5 of my letters came from my MA job, and the other letter came from my gap year. The Orgo 1 class I retook, my professor gave me a letter of recommendation from that. So yeah, you kind of want to identify what you're going to be doing in the gap year, and that's kind of the point of this video. After 2022, in 2023, I started focusing on other aspects of my application, like my GRE, my personal statement, and other things of that nature. My GRE, I low-key did not really take it seriously. I could have gotten a better score if I actually tried, but I didn't. Thankfully, though, the schools that accepted me didn't require the GRE, so that was great. My personal statement, I took a couple months writing that. That was kind of hard, but I was able to have the doctors at my job, one of them actually, who wrote me the letter of recommendation. He also read over my personal statement and gave me feedback, which was great. But yeah, 2023, the year that I applied to PA school, that was when I was working on my personal statement. I might make a video on personal statements later. So for me personally, 2022 was my planting year, right? I was planting the seeds to make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing in order to then in 2023 have the seeds blossom and grow into fruition, which would be an acceptance. Technically, I got accepted into PA school, or the second school that I'm gonna go to, in 2024. So my timing was a little off, but God's timing is better than my timing. But you guys get the point. I was very strategic about what I did during my gap year to make sure that I was gonna get success during my application cycle. If you guys aren't aware, the first school that accepted me lost accreditation, but I got accepted to that school in 2023. I'm just not gonna count that because I'm not going to that school because there's accreditation problems. But I did get accepted into another school in 2024, right before the cycle ended. So my gap year to me proved to be very beneficial, which is why I'm letting you guys know what I did so you guys can prepare to make sure that you succeed during your gap year. Now, let's get into what I think you guys should be doing and how to best strategize to make the most of your gap year so that you can get an acceptance. So, number one, make sure you are fully aware of the requirements to get into PA school. Every PA school is different, but in general, a lot of them have the same requirements. You want a general idea. So you want to know exactly what prerequisites you need to take. You need to know how many hours you need to have. Some schools require 500, other schools require 2,000. I recommend starting to make a list to see what the schools you are interested in have in common, and then strive to achieve what they have in common so you can go to those schools. So for example, if all of the schools you're applying to don't require the GRE, then there's no point in you studying for the GRE. But if one or two of them do, or all of them do, then that's when you want to consider the GRE into your plans. So just make sure you are aware of what every school requires. I cannot stress that enough, because the last thing you want to do is apply to a school and get auto rejected because you did not pay attention to the requirements. Make sure you have a general idea of what PA schools want before you even start this journey so that you can best prepare for that journey. Does that make sense, guys? I hope that makes sense. Like, make sure you know what you need, okay? Like, you know what you need to get done so that you can start making arrangements to get those things done. Again, realize that every school is different, so some schools may differ in their requirements, but in general, you should have your anatomies. Most schools do require anatomy 1 and 2 with lab. A lot of schools do require Orgo 1, sometimes even Orgo 2. The lab may or may not be included. Most schools do require you to have patient care hours. There are a few that require none, but for the most part, they require some amount of hours. I don't recommend applying to PA school with 0 hours. The more the merrier, especially because the competition is fierce. And I think I might make another video on the competition and how fierce it can be, because I didn't realize that when I applied. I realized a lot of the things that I know now during my cycle. Whereas if I had known everything before, I probably would have waited another year to apply. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because I got accepted, but I feel like the process would have been way easier on me had I waited another year to strengthen my application. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not gonna get into that right now, but yeah. Now, this may hurt some people, but it must be said. I'm here to keep it real with y'all. And this is very important. This may ruffle some feathers, but you need to be very realistic about your stats, and you need to compare your stats to other people. I'm sorry.
I said what I said. Oh, don't like it.
I sure damn don't like it.
Where's the end? What you want me to do?
But that is the truth. Again, I did not realize how competitive it was going to be. So I did not compare my stats. I didn't even know what the average GPA was. Okay, you need to compare your stats to other people who have gotten accepted into the programs that you would like to attend, because that'll tell you if you are up to par or not. Now, that's not me saying if the accepted average GPA is like a 3.9 and you have a 3.4, you're not gonna get in. You there's a chance, but we want to improve our chances, right? We don't want to rely on chance. We want to make sure that we can ensure that we get in, okay? I know it sounds hard and it's scary, and I know comparison is a thief of joy, but sometimes you need to compare yourself to see where you are on the totem pole. because applying to PA school is very expensive and time consuming. And I would hate for you to apply to PA school with a low GPA or low hours or a terrible personal statement or whatever the case may be, and you get rejected and waste all your time and money. So definitely look into the accepted profiles of the students that they've accepted and compare yourself to that. A lot of schools have a demographics page on their website, and it'll break down the GPA of the accepted students, how many hours they had, what background are they from, if they were veterans, if they were economic disadvantaged, etc., etc. I will try to put an example somewhere on the screen here of like a random school and their accepted profiles, just so you guys can have an example of what I'm talking about. Of course, every school calculates their metrics differently, but I think it's important for you guys to look at the metrics and see where you fall within the metrics. Okay? Okay. Now, the next thing, I kind of touched on this before, but you really want to focus on what exactly do you need to improve your application, right? If you're considering taking a gap year, you're probably thinking that something may be lacking, right? Or maybe you're not sure whether or not you should take a gap year. Well, that's why you're watching this video, right? You need to make sure that you know what you're lacking before you embark on this journey, so you don't waste any more time in your gap year, okay? So for example, I was told by someone who was on the admissions committee of a PA school that I should retake Orgo 1 because that C in Orgo 1 would hold me back from getting accepted to that particular school. Now, although I had no desire to go to that particular school for PA school, I still took his advice and I retook Orgo 1 during my gap year. Okay, that was one point that I needed to improve. That was one point of improvement that needed to be done, and I went ahead and I did that. Another thing I realized was I was lacking genetics and microbiology. A lot of PA schools require one or the other or even both, and I did not have that done, so I went ahead and I took microbiology and genetics during my gap year. That's another example. Last but not least, I didn't have patient care hours or recommendation letters at the ready. So what did I do during my gap year? I got patient care hours and I networked at my job in order to be able to get my letters of recommendation. So I was able to pinpoint where my application was weak, where it was lacking, where it needed improvement, and I went ahead and I improved on my application during my gap year. This is very important. You want to have a clear idea of what you need to fix or what you need to improve on, so that when you start the year or start, the gap year, you know what to do. You have a game plan set forward. I recommend maybe doing a SMART goal. So if you don't know what a SMART goal is a way to accomplish your goals. It's like an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based, right? So specific, what exactly you're trying to do. The goal obviously is to get into PA school, right? Measurable, make sure you're able to do what you're setting out to do, okay? Achievable, make sure that you can reasonably accomplish your goal within a certain time frame. Relevant, your goal should align with your values and long-term objectives. So for example, if your goal is to get into PA school and a requirement to get into PA school is your hours, that will be something relevant to do, getting a job in healthcare that can assist you in getting your hours. It wouldn't be something else like, for example, doing a mission trip for a week. That's not really gonna help you as much as, of course, getting a real job in healthcare, okay? And time-based, setting a realistic but ambitious end date to clarify task prioritization and increase motivation. So, like I said, 2022 was the year for me to get my life together for PA school. 2022 is when I made most of the strides I needed to get into PA school, so that in 2023, I'd have great results. So I recommend maybe a SMART goal, or just writing down what you are lacking, how to improve it, and when you're gonna start improving it. It doesn't have to be very complicated, but just make sure you know what you need to work on by looking at what your application looks like right now, what your stats are, comparing that to what PA school recommends, and comparing that to the average accepted applicant. Okay? Okay. You have to figure out whether it is your hours, your GPA, getting letters of recommendation, shadowing. Maybe you need to shadow some PAs to figure out if that's what you want to really do. Community service, maybe working on your personal statement. To be honest, your personal statement should not take a year to write, maybe 2 to 3 months to perfect it. But maybe you don't have enough experience to even put on the personal statement. I don't know. But again, it's up to you to look at your application and see again where you are lacking and how you can improve. So I hope that helps on whether or not you should take a gap year and how to best strategize for it. It really isn't that hard. You may have to do a post-bac. I recommend DIY post-bacs at community colleges. That's what I did, because community colleges are typically cheaper than a university, and it'll be better on your wallet because again, PA school is very expensive and time consuming. If you guys want me to do a video on DIY post-bacs, I can, but they're really not that complicated. You are just taking classes that you didn't take in undergrad. If you guys want me to go in depth about a DIY post-bac and how to best strategize on that, I can. You just have to make sure the community college has the classes that you need to get into PA school, right? They have the prerequisites after college. So for example, you need to make sure that they have the microbiology, the anatomy, the genetics, et cetera, et cetera. The one caveat about community colleges though is that typically they don't have upper division science classes. So let's say for example, you did pretty well on most of your science classes, but you're still not there yet. If you don't want to retake certain classes, it's kind of hard at a community college because they don't have upper level like plant biology or endocrinology or pharmaceutical science or like any like sciencey like psychopharmacology, like pharmacology or certain upper division science courses they just don't have. But they typically have the lower levels like bio, anatomy, chem, etc., etc. So that's kind of the only caveat if you want to take upper division classes to make yourself look better. Typically, you'd have to go to a university for that, and those cost more money, but you have to figure out exactly what you need to improve on your application. So, yeah. So in case you are unaware of the general prerequisites needed for PA school, I'm gonna quickly go over a few of them. Now, remember, this is not an exhaustive list. Every school is different. For example, the school that I got accepted to required an extra class that most other PA schools do not offer. I happen to have taken that class in undergrad, but it's not like something most people have taken. So I'm saying that to say that like, this is just a list, a general list, right? It may change from school to school. That's why it's important to make a school list to see what the schools you're interested in are requiring. Okay. So most entry-level PA programs require you to have a bachelor's degree because it's a master's degree. So you need a bachelor's before you can get into the master's. The bachelor's can be in anything as long as you've done the prerequisites. And here are the prerequisites. Anatomy, physiology. You can take anatomy and physiology together. I did that. I took anatomy and physiology 1 and then anatomy and physiology 2. You don't have to separate them, okay? Biochemistry. My PA schools did not require biochemistry. I didn't take that in undergrad. So some schools require biochemistry, but other schools do not. Biology, microbiology, chemistry, organic chemistry, English composition and writing, genetics, medical terminology, psychology, usually gen psych and or abnormal psych, and statistics. Also, many PA programs require you to have patient care experience. Mind you guys, this is all on aapa.org's website if you guys want to look at this. Now, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but here are some examples. Medical assistant, which I did, emergency medical technician, paramedic, medic or medical corpsman, lab assistant or phlebotomist, registered nurse, or I guess LPNs could work too if you have an LPN license, emergency room technician, surgical tech, or certified nursing assistant. Typically, schools do want you to have, again, 2,000 hours. That's about a year of working full time before you can apply. Some schools require less, but 2,000 is the max I've seen. But that doesn't mean once you get to 2,000 hours, you quit your job. Like, no, I kept working. By the time I finished my application, I had over 2,000 hours. And by the end of the application year, by the end of 2023, I had about 3,000 hours. But I applied with 2,200, 300, I don't remember the exact amount. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you guys are able to take the advice I gave in this video to kind of jumpstart what you are gonna be doing in your gap year. I know it is June, so a lot of you guys have probably already graduated from undergrad, and you're probably wondering what your next steps are. So hopefully this video can give you an idea of what to do moving forward to ensure that you are ready to apply next year. I know the cycle has already opened for this year, but if you guys want me to do a video on DIY postbacks and how to get started with those, I can definitely assist with that. Just leave a comment down below. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it kind of got you thinking about what you need to do in order to apply to PA school. I know the cycle has already opened for this year, but that doesn't mean that you can't use this to help you for next year. Another thing, don't be alarmed, right? A lot of people have to apply 3 times to get into PA school. Like the average applicant has to apply again. I was ready to apply again because the first school, like I mentioned, lost accreditation. So I was ready to do this whole process over again. I had a game plan though. I wasn't gonna apply again the next cycle, but I might make a video on what I was gonna do had I not gotten in. But don't beat yourself up if you don't get in your first time. Just make sure that you have a game plan to ensure you get in the next time. But yeah, most people apply an average of 3 times before they get into PA school because of how competitive it is. So don't beat yourself up that you don't get in your first time. It is okay. Let's just work on improving ourselves to get in the second time. That is all for today's video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it and found it very helpful. And please leave a comment down below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.